underrepresented groups. My name is Dagmar Bennett and I work in the innovation team in the Prince's Trust. A year ago, I found myself unemployed, receiving help from the Prince's Trust. Despite having a first-class honours and a lot of experience in the workplace, I still found it difficult to find work. I got support from the Prince's Trust and attended a Get Hired Live Day, which essentially, for those of you that don't know, is a whole day where you have employers who have got live vacancies and young people who are looking for work. We will then facilitate speed interviews. And for me as an unemployed young person at the time, having that face-to-face time with employers was absolutely amazing. I had interviews, 4-second interviews, 2 successful job offers, and now I've got my job with the Prince's Trust. So 49% of young people have said that it will be harder than ever to get a job in these current times. Today, we are excited to present an amazing group of panelists who will discuss why diversity and inclusion is so important. Please feel free over the next 45 minutes to pop any questions you have in the bottom right-hand corner in the chat box. So I'm going to hand it over to our panelists to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name's Jasmine Dotiwala. I'm a broadcaster, a multimedia broadcaster for television, radio and digital and print press. Depending on how old some of you are, if you were around in the 90s, I hosted a show called The Word on Channel 4. After that, I was a presenter for MTV News Worldwide and I stayed at Viacom for 15 years helping set up their diversity committees worldwide before ending up leading some of the MTV channels like MTV UK, MTV Base, MTV Dance. I'm currently a reporter for Channel 4 News for arts and culture features. I'm on the BBC on BBC Radio London doing a show called The Scene, but my main 9-to-5 job is at the Media Trust where I lead youth engagement. We train young people from all over the UK on how to create jobs and employability in television, digital, branding, marketing and radio.
Davina, would you like to go next?
Thanks, Dagmar, and thank you to the Prince's Trust for having me talk today, and good morning, everyone. My name is Davina, and I've been working in the creative industries for around 14 years now. I started off my career helping young people get into the arts and culture sector, and then I moved into advertising and media, working for Cannes Lions and Dentsu. I've always been an advocate for D&I initiatives and sat on many of the organisation's steering committees. And most recently, I worked for Mindshare UK as a senior marketing manager, and again was the chair of the D&I committee there. And I worked really closely with the leadership team on a D&I strategy. And I'm very much looking forward to this discussion today. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name's Pippo Khalwa. Some of you may know me as Piki Saku. I started out pursuing a career as a musician for a few years of my life. I did a couple of tours in California. I've done some shows with some relatively big names in the UK and the US. I went on to run an independent clothing brand called Dio Valente. And then some circumstances in my life led to me becoming an advocate for social change and a public speaker. I went on to speak on CNN, on Sky. I did talks at Oxford University, SOAS University, The Voice newspaper on topics like D&I, social inclusion, neglect, things like this. And then I went on to go to a place called Liberty, a creative agency, which is also kind of a talent accelerator for young people, I suppose. They kind of help people with skill sets and life experience who may not necessarily have it on paper, and they help you to turn it into a career. I then went on to do a couple of projects for companies like Nominet, Facebook, one that involved the Prince's Trust as well. And now I work as an account executive at Codec, which is a future-facing audience insights company. very happy to be here as well. Thanks for having me.
Amazing, thank you. I have to make apologies for Pip Jamieson. We're having a few technical issues, but hopefully she will join later on. So I'm going to get straight into it, really. Jasmine, I know you do a lot of work with the Media Trust around educating young people on how to use transferable skills and how you can add value, how they can add value to their business. How would you advise for the companies that are online that they can retain their young, diverse talent?
Sure. I mean, we all know that experiencing diversity in our regular everyday lives means that we have more exposure to people and cultures, traditions and practices that are unlike our own. And we know that learning skills to communicate and interact with communities and concepts that we're unfamiliar with gives us more of a worldly view. And why that specifically matters when it comes to businesses, building diverse and inclusive places in workplaces isn't just a buzzword. I know people talk about it as that, but it's a key factor in bridging the skills gap that exist in businesses in 2020. So when you consider that young, diverse people all across the UK now are digital whizzes, they are absolutely holding transferable skills when it comes to marketing, advertising and media. And every business uses marketing, advertising and media. So you have to ask yourselves, from recruiting to retaining your staff, how can you challenge any established behaviour? How can you unlock the benefits of a truly diverse team? Because many of you probably already have young, diverse people and people from diverse communities. But at the moment, are they feeling like they authentically belong in your businesses? So when we talk about recruitments, for example, there are so many barriers to entry. We've got archaic recruitment processes, we have undiverse interview teams, we have lots of unconscious bias, we have a lack of experienced managers supporting and understanding the challenges of either young or diverse communities. So it's talking about new ways of recruitment. Maybe if you haven't considered it already, meeting recruits face to face. Many aren't great at cover letters and CVs and applications, but they are brimming with new and digital ideas. And it's about ideas. We're in an ideas industry at the moment. So maybe you could create easier application processes. Apart from meeting them, you might suggest and consider applications via video. A lot of the video applications that we have in TV and the media world have brought us so much incredible talent, from talent that would have never come through if they were just CVs and cover letters. So it's thinking about that and looking for their passion, because, you know, you can teach transferable skill sets, but you can't give someone the passion. Look for young people that are resilient, because it's tough being in the industry, and mostly listen to young people and listen to their ideas. So for example, when you're thinking of transferable skills, I always talk about the fact that young people are on digital and social media all day. When you think about SEM and search engine marketing, students with SEM experience can increase your company's visibility. Paid advertising and web trafficking is what they're actually doing with their own Instagram stories and Snapchats. They're constantly managing analytics, and businesses, you all know that if you can't measure it, you can't manage your business. So young people are already ahead of the game on that. Things like content marketing, creating blogs and podcasts. This is an area that young people excel in. All of us work with email marketing and strategy planning. Social selling, video, Snapchat, Instagram and Facebook is where young people are really, really skilled up. So think about perhaps two-way mentoring with some of your senior leaders and young people. Maybe they can two-way mentor. Move your team bonding and socials to somewhere neutral, maybe away from the pub, because it's not always appropriate for people who aren't used to a drinking culture, or if they're not culturally used to it. Let diverse communities and young people bring their authentic selves to work. You know, some of the greatest digital concepts that we've had at Channel 4 have come from a couple of young men who do wear tracksuits and trainers to work and wear t-shirts, and you know, that wouldn't have been accepted 10 years ago, but actually they're full of ideas and they're brimming with new ways of bringing young eyeballs to the business. And just think about, you know, giving regular and positive feedback. Make provisions for cultures and different scenarios. When I work for YouTube and Google, I know that that company, for example, lets people from different cultures have the days of the year off when it's their festivals, whether that be a Jewish festival or a Diwali festival or whatever. It's in the calendar so that those diverse staff members are feeling as important as Christians around Christmas. Be aware of unconscious bias. Be aware of microaggressions because they are around. Make provisions for cultural scenarios and religious festivals, and just create safe and structured places for your staff. You know, are they at the top table? Are young people and diverse people in your community at the top table when you are making decisions in your company and your business? Are young people's voices respected? I mean, there's so much there. Just make sure they're included and listened to, I guess, would be my best advice about retaining them.
I don't know if anybody else has got any points on that subject as well. I don't know if you've got any points on from your experience young diverse.
I think you're on mute.
Hello.
There we go.
There you go.
Classic mistake. One thing that I would add to what Jasmine said is also, you know, a lot of young people might think that they need a degree in advertising or they need to have studied, you know, something in advertising and media. And quite often, like, you know, we're talking about there's a, you know, strategic roles or strategists, for example. You know, if you've studied something like psychology, you've got an amazing way of getting great insights into audiences. Like, you're trained in thinking in that way, so you don't necessarily have to have, you know, that specific degree to break into the industry as well.
Fab. So I know in the Prince's Trust we have a lot of platforms that will help young diverse talent get into the workplace. So some of these are like the jobs board, the Get Hired Live events, the one that I just spoke about previously, the one that I got hired from. So I was wondering, Davina, if you could tell us a little bit more about the D&I strategies that you've worked on, and how you think that companies can improve these pathways into employment.
Yeah, sure. So we're talking about how companies can improve pathways for underrepresented groups. Then I think your business needs to really place like importance and value on diversifying their workplace and creating a real inclusive culture. I know that Jasmine was touching on it as well. So I think what that really means is, you know, making it a core pillar in your business. You know, this means having a plan around it, having a strategy around it, being able to execute a number of things, but also having, you know, your leadership team advocating for it as well. I think a really important starting place when you do this is looking at measuring like where you're at in the business already. So doing an audit of your business and seeing where you currently sit in terms of representation in the workplace, so that once you've got that data, you can use it as a benchmark for measuring the success of your plan and the successes of investing in D&I. And one of the things that, you know, goes into that plan is investing. So investing in recruitment platforms such as the Prince's Trust Get Hired, who have access to those underrepresented groups of talent. I think that's often the hardest thing for businesses, is that they don't actually know how to access that talent. So you could, you know, it's definitely about leaning on existing platforms that are already out there. I think also when we're talking about recruitment, you know, it's about like really understanding your policies within your business. So, you know, what are your policies on recruitment? Quite often, I think with large organizations, you know, they use one recruitment platform and they to streamline that process, but that can, you know, that can be a barrier to entry. So I think there needs to be a bit more flexibility around, you know, recruitment and understanding the processes that are already in place. I think also, you know, we're talking about improving pathways. It's not just about access. Of course, it's often the hardest thing, but it's also about the business being attractive to those groups of talent. So, you know, is it a business that they themselves can see them working in? And I think that goes back to creating that inclusive culture. And I think also, you know, Jasmine touched on this as well, which is about support. So, you know, are they given adequate training with these young people when they go into organisations? You know, does that differ to what, say, an apprentice gets, to what a newly grad gets, to what someone that's breaking into the, you know, coming from another industry and has experience in another sector, but coming into, say, into your sector? And then also training for managers as well. So, you know, are they being trained in how they're measuring performance and career development? So this is something that I often hear from people from underrepresented groups. You know, they get their foot into the door, but then the retention rate is really low in a lot of businesses because they're not being measured on how they can succeed and go up the ranks in that company. I think in terms of support and as well, you know, it is having those steering committees and having accessibility in place where, you know, these groups they really act as a voice to what their needs are. And quite often I hear mentorship and having a sponsor is something that is really needed. So making sure, you know, you've got mentors that and in it as well, you know, it is about you know, two-way mentorship and reverse mentorship as well. So, you know, are they listening to those are the leadership team and senior managers listening to those young people, as well as vice versa? I think, like, I just want to close on this point that when we talk about representation, especially in advertising and media, you know, some of the statistics and whether people feel represented by these brands, they don't reflect modern Britain. You know, you've got 44% of Londoners who are from BAME backgrounds, 71% of South Asians that feel that mainstream advertising has no relevance to them. You have only 33% of ads that feature women. They control something like over 80% of consumer purchasing decisions. And that's just like two underrepresented groups that I'm talking about there. So I think, you know, this goes back to really placing importance and value on D&I and growing your business to be like truly representative of the people buying your products or using your services. So I think that's the key thing to remember, especially when companies are cutting costs with the current situation of COVID. And often, you know, D&I initiatives lose out. So I think, you know, really remembering, you know, being representative is reflecting your market, is reflecting modern Britain. Thank you.
I just wanted to add something to that, which was obviously it's very important for companies to look at diversifying their workforces for the sake of fixing these stats and whatnot. But in reality, it's also important from the perspective of the actual companies getting some benefit for themselves, because so many companies and so many industries are attempting to communicate to young people and market things to young people without actually talking to young people, if that makes sense. There are a few companies out there, like, for example, Liberty, Uncommon. That's just a couple I could name. I'm sure there's many more, but they actually open their doors to young people. Like, they have co-working spaces within their offices where young people can go to work. Right now, there's so many enthusiastic young people out there with skill sets that know they want to be somewhere and know they want to be someone doing a job that matters, but they have no idea how to get a way in when so many companies are asking for work experience straight away off the bat. And to get work experience, you need to have, like, it's just, there's obviously this kind of vicious cycle of certain young people coming out of, even those that come out of uni, a lot of them are struggling to get work somewhere because they don't have any work experience, and that just doesn't make any sense. If companies just open their doors to young people, then you can see who's enthusiastic, you can see who has drive, you can get a taste of what these young people think, you can get their opinion on the campaigns you're running, the kind of work you're doing. You can include them without even having employed them, and then by the time you get to a point where you're looking to employ someone, you can already see people around you that have the skill sets, that have the drive, that have the enthusiasm to do the jobs that you want them to do. And also touching on a point that Davina made about making these jobs attractive to young people. There's so many young people out there that kind of, they want to be someone, they want to do a certain job, but like Jasmine said, maybe they wear tracksuits, maybe they wear trainers, and maybe they come from a background where they literally can't imagine themselves stepping out of a Covent Garden office in a suit, in loafers, and they just never connect themselves to that. So they just exclude a whole group of jobs that they would otherwise be great in. I mean, I know for a large portion of my life, I basically just wasted my time doing stupid things and following a blueprint of other young people around me, just doing things that I thought, oh, this is what's possible for me to do, kind of cutting off future prospects for myself, making loads and loads of mistakes, until I eventually found Liberty, who basically said, oh, look, all of this life experience that you have, you just haven't known how to put it on paper yet. You haven't known where you can apply it. And it was incredibly helpful in basically completely changing my life. And without sounding conceited, I know at the job that I do now at Codec, where we have to look at patterns of human behavior and kind of translate data based around like social media engagement into recommendations for brands. I know I add value to the company because I can understand kind of large portions of audiences that maybe other people in the company may not be so accustomed to. And it's very important for companies to kind of have a broad range. If they want to talk to a wide group of people, they need to have a wide range of people within their companies so that they can actually understand how to, instead of making assumptions about how to. And yeah, that was just briefly the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Thanks so much, Pippo. I guess leading on from what you're talking about, I know you did work with the Prince's Trust on a light work campaign with Facebook and Liberty. Can you tell us a little bit more about that campaign, and can you also tell us what you think the benefits are of having young diverse talent in job titles across the board?
Yeah, no problem. I was very proud to be a part of that campaign. I was part of a team of 6, and Facebook basically approached us with a very simple brief, which was we feel like, you know, like Facebook owning Instagram and whatnot, they are a huge part of communication amongst young people, and they felt like they needed to be a part of the conversation that helps to curb youth violence, which is obviously a huge problem that definitely kind of is exacerbated by social media as well. And they kind of, well, we looked at the other kind of knife crime campaigns that have happened before the one we created, and it was kind of instantly clear why they wouldn't work, because they were created by people that obviously had no actual connection to the issue. Like campaigns that kind of hashtag being knife free, or just talk about the importance of putting a knife down, which doesn't make any sense, because obviously logically, like, who thinks it's a clever idea to run around the streets with a knife? It's obviously not a clever idea. So by the time you've come to that conclusion that you're going to leave your house with a knife, there's clearly other issues going on there that need to be addressed. You've clearly got self-worth issues. You've clearly got you've got a lack of understanding of where you could be in life. People are leaving schools with average or even good grades. I mean, I left school with pretty good grades, and I wasn't able to get a good job. I was able to work in Wagamama's part-time, and when my mum got her back problems, like, that wasn't paying the bills. So what was I going to turn to? I didn't know how to enter an office environment. I didn't have the skill sets. I didn't even imagine the job roles being attainable, like the kind of job roles that I'm looking at now. And so many young people they have this mentality of, oh, I could be a footballer, or I could be a rap star. And that's obviously just, that's so narrow. That's ridiculously narrow. Like these are great career paths if you can make them, but such a small percentage of people are actually able to kind of enter these industries and end up leaving with some money. Like, a much larger percentage of people will enter these industries, try, fail, enter cycles of depression, and then after losing their self-worth, basically slowly start gradually cutting off their future prospects until they are stuck in a cycle where there isn't much they can do but crime. So we basically kind of wanted to approach it with a much more holistic view on the issue, and look at the kind of the root causes of why people are getting involved in knife crime, not discuss knife crime at all. And basically the whole kind of aim of the project was to highlight hidden roles in various industries and kind of make them appear more accessible to the young people. You don't have to do that.
Oh, I don't.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But just make them much more accessible and kind of appealing to young people, and also give young people the kind of tools and the kind of content they need to see to actually make them feel like they are worthy of these jobs and they could enter these jobs. So I feel very passionate about the fact that, you know, that there is a difference in life experience and education experience, and both of those are kind of necessary for a company to be able to speak to their audiences in a way that resonates. You can't just have education and theory. There are people out there that can't put all of their skills on paper, but they have all the understanding of running a small business. They understand how to market, they understand how to pitch, they understand how to speak to different groups of people. They just don't understand how to enter an office. And I
don't know, Jasmine, if you've got any. Sorry, just
sorry, I didn't mean to run over time.
No, it's like what you were saying was absolutely amazing. I was loving it. I was just wondering, because I know that Jasmine works with young people similar to what Liberty does. I'm just wondering if you've got any points on what Pippo was saying.
Muted.
I think you're still muted, Jasmine. Even though I love a good mouth.
Oh, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Oh, I didn't yeah, okay, don't worry. I thought that you guys were unmuting and muting us. Apologies. So yeah, I completely agree with everything Pippo says. And like I say, and I've always said, listen to the young people. Often when you have a diversity committee or people talking about diversity, it's adults talking about young people. There are no young people in the room, or it's people, you know, in a white audience talking about a black audience. There's no black people at the committee, so include the people you're talking about. And I assume that on this call we've got lots of leadership audience and staff from many businesses, and the one thing that we have to think about is the talent pipeline and the future of the industry, because ultimately we're not advocating diversity just so that there's an equal playing field and that everyone has equality and it's a fairer society. We're also doing it because it's better for your businesses. So for example, the IAB in the UK and Middlesex University, they explored the digital skills gap in the ad and marketing industry, and they highlighted where all the gaps were in knowledge and training, where it was most prominent, and all the results are based on a survey of 78 UK businesses, and they found that 88% of their business members claim that finding qualified individuals with up-to-date digital skills is a challenge for most businesses. And that's why at Media Trust, one of the things and one of the programs that we run is called London 360, and another one is called Creativity Works. And in those programs, we've had 16 to 25-year-olds who come in from a variety of backgrounds. Some of them have not had full education systems. Some of them have got master's degrees. They are a complete mishmash from all over the community. The one thing they're passionate about is getting their voices heard in the media. And the programs that we run have a week in each different theme that I know from experience they're going to need, because I've worked in the industry for over 20 years. I look at the diverse people coming in. I see why they're not employed. I see why they're not retained. It's like Pippo said, it's soft skills and hard skills. So hard skills they tend to have. They can film, they can shoot, they can edit. Soft skills around, you know, professionalism, dress code, eye contact, body language. Some of these things need to be taught because they're not obvious to everyone if you haven't been educated in a certain system. So it's about your bottom line. Some of the programs that we run make sure that young people come to you and they're a valuable package that are going to add something to your brand, and they'll add value. So they do a week's worth of shooting, because every business from TfL to the NHS to a travel industry to the entertainment industry, you need young people who are digitally savvy. So they can all shoot, they can all frame, they can all edit. They can all create their own stories on television, on radio for radio podcasts, and then they can also rip that same story and turn it into a written piece. So I've got young people who can create a 360 model for your business. Now imagine how valuable that is for any business. When I was going out to do that and I was in my early 20s, I needed a crew of 5 to 7 people to do that with me. A producer, a director, a talent booker, a presenter. Now each of my young people can be sent into a business. They can shoot, edit, they know about Ofcom and compliance, they're about marketing and branding, they know about value, and they're adding value. That's what businesses are telling us when they come across to Media Trust for new talent. You know, a great example, just a simple quick one, is the Nike sports brand and the Colin Kaepernick. When young people today, young people of Pippo's generation, they're very different from my generation. Young people today are advocates. They're inclusive. It's normal for them to just accept people. So if you can understand that young audience, they are your future customers and clients. They are already involved in diversity inclusion. They don't call it that. It's just their normal world. So the Nike sportswear brand, when they got behind that player, that football player, the American football player, Colin Kaepernick, the Kaepernick effect was that their share rose massively, $83 million more in the first 24 hours after they set out their new diversity campaign with Colin Kaepernick fronting it. That really visual black and white picture. If we were on a Zoom call and I was allowed, I would share my screen with you to show you it. You know, they had over 2,000% of an increase in mentions of their brand online for businesses. They had over 3 million new businesses come to them. It's just unbelievable what happens to your business bottom line if you can invest in it. So just think about that. We're not talking about diversity just because it's fair. We're saying it's going to help the bottom line of your business profit sheet.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Jasmine. Pip, thank you. Sorry about the tech issues. Thanks for joining. So Pip, as a dyslexic female tech founder, you promote social responsibility and help businesses build a diverse talent. That's at the heart of the dots. I myself did one of your, what was it, Google Fast Track 50 last year. So I was just wondering if you could tell us all a little bit more about what the key benefits of having a diverse and inclusive workforce are.
Yeah, firstly, I'm so sorry. I've been having massive tech issues. So I live on a houseboat, and so things can be a little unstable. Can you hear me all okay?
Yes.
Yes, 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 yes.
No.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me all okay? Oh, wonderful. Okay, fine, brilliant. So yeah, I guess, you know, there's, yeah, as you mentioned, I'm kind of a dyslexic sole female tech founder. We're sort of rarer than hen's teeth. And yeah, I mean, there's endless research that diversity is good for business, good for profitability, and brilliant for creativity. I mean, in the end, if we all are the same, we can't think differently. And I think, you know, if you don't have different people with different backgrounds in a room, you're just going to come up with very samey solutions. And, you know, on a very basic level, for example, when seatbelts were invented, they were invented by quite a homogenous team. And when they developed seatbelts, even though, for example, women were less likely to have accidents, they were more likely to die in those accidents. And the reason that happened is because it was a homogenous team that built it and primarily tested those crash test dummies on male crash test dummies. Now, that's a very extreme case, but I see it in tech particularly, where, you know, if you've got homogenous people building solutions, you're not building solutions for everyone. And it means that we are really suffering in terms of creativity and innovations and the solutions we're building to help everyone instead of just helping the few.
Amazing. I don't know if everybody, just sort of working off the cuff, if everybody's okay just to talk a little bit further and then maybe just go a little bit 5 minutes over due to Pip with the issues. I don't know if everyone's all right with that.
Yes.
Yes. So amazing. Okay, I want to get all of the juicy goodness from you, Pip. So yeah, I just want to. I've got a question here from Mac from Formula One, and I know that many of you were champions of diversity and inclusion. So I was just wondering, for those that are listening, for all of the people, whether they're senior or whether they're less senior, how can they get their senior stakeholders listening and to making a real change on diversity and inclusion on their organisation? So I'm wondering, Pip, if you wouldn't mind leading on this one. Thanks.
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Pip.
You're still on mute.
Just press the microphone button quickly.
I think it's because every time we stop speaking, I think someone on the other side is muting us, and it's thrown us because we haven't muted ourselves. Pip, you're still on mute.
You're still
if
mute.
you put your button on the screen, Pip, you can press the unmute button. Yes, there you go.
There we go. Okay, all right, amazing. I love how I run a tech company and I'm finding it really hard to run the tech. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's a massive challenge, you know. I mean, in the end, senior leaders, they're worried about profitability, they're worried about their bottom line, they're worried about retaining their best staff. But the reality is right now is that there is just, as I said, endless research that it is better for profitability, it is better for the bottom line. And something that I find really compelling when I'm talking to, I mean, we've got about 20,000 businesses that now use the dots to hire talent. What I find is a really compelling argument is retention. So there's this brilliant piece of research by Creative Equals that found that teams that are inclusive and diverse are happier and more likely to stay with a business. And when businesses are fighting for top talent, that for me has been a really compelling reason for business leaders to really look at this challenge. But I think, you know, when it comes to business leaders, it's about the facts. It's about, you know, this is better for your bottom line. This is better for creativity. And this is an investment that will just put you ahead of everyone in the future. And it's not easy, to be honest. People tend to slip into their own habits, but you know, it's really important that as long as there's a few senior leaders within an organization, I guess also find the advocates. Like, you know, Dagmar mentioned the Fast Track 50 program we did with Google. You know, that was because an amazing woman called Nishma Robb, who's really passionate about this, was the kind of influencer inside Google who were influencing the other senior leaders. So find that person that's at the kind of C-suite, senior level, who is passionate about this space, because they have the influence to push through the agenda to the CEO or to the other C-suite people in the business.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what people were saying as well. I don't know if am I live? Yeah, I just wanted to add to that as well, like definitely retention, but I think also I've worked really closely with and been, you know, fortunate enough to work really closely with our leadership team at the agencies that I've been at. And I think it's also getting them to understand perceptions. I think, you know, like, and one way you can do that is just ask the people that work for you, you know, how do they feel being in that organization, you know, and then they'll be able to see the difference in perception from like the top level C-suite leadership team down to kind of people at entry level that are just kind of starting out. And I think that, you know, having that data or having those kind of insights will really, really help with also with, you know, going, look, okay, right, well, this is how people are really feeling, so we need to do something about it.
And can I just add, following on from what Davina just said, if people that you ask, if you're asking these groups of people how they feel about working in a business and they say things that are uncomfortable to you, don't just edit what they said to make your form look nice. Just hear what they're saying, and if things need to be altered within your business, you might just need to do that, because obviously having those people's voices heard on a more senior level is incredibly important. You can't just kind of have them there as tokens to to make your business look good. That's, you still kind of have a homogenous business model if you do that. It's kind of, it kind of defeats the point of inclusion, if that makes sense. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
And can I add something to that? Just as for the question, one way that we found leaders really do engage better with diverse young people when they first enter and help retain them in the business is just simple things. You know, maybe have a monthly breakfast with a few different random staff members and include young people in that. One of my bosses has lunches every now and then where she'll just take a random group of staff, and it swaps round quite regularly. So within the year, everyone's had FaceTime with the top leaders and the CEOs and bosses. It just means that you've got young, diverse people around a group of people, and they can have their own voices and ideas heard. And often that's a direct conversation with a leadership team that they would never have a chance to do in, you know, the very structured levels of corporations that we know now. So it's quite simple. Just make them real life, you know, examples.
Definitely. I've got a couple of questions here, so I'm just going to run through these. One question from Anonymous is, how does a major corporate company change culture? What's the bare minimum they should be doing, and what's the perfect setup actually look like in this? I'm going to open these up to the floor. So
I would say create a co-working space. That's probably your first step. Just have people there present. Like, if you're not ready to kind of change your entire hiring process, I mean, I understand that so many people apply for each position that even though it's kind of despicable that it happens, it kind of has to happen with all these like keyword searching bots or whatever. I mean, I would suggest like maybe have more people in the hiring process so that they can actually, you know, they can actually look through each application properly and understand what they are. But if you can't do that yet, then just open your doors to them as a co-working space. Just have them around, and then that's your first step. And then slowly you'll be able to see the value that they're bringing to you just by being there. And you'll see that like maybe some of the ideals that you have in terms of communicating with different groups of people, you'll see how they're flawed, and then you can kind of slowly start to make the changes yourself, and then you can slowly start to onboard them into other parts of the company.
I was going to add to that as well. I think you really need to look at your business from all angles, you know, top to bottom, left to right, to really have an inclusive culture. I think I'll just go back to something I said before, which was, I think if we're going to be looking at like how to change culture, you need to know where you're currently at. And I keep saying that. I think it is about, you know, measuring where you're currently set out and using that as a benchmark to move forward, because then you can go, right, this is working, but this one thing isn't working. It really backs up, you know, your plan and your and why you're investing in it.
Fab. I'm going to go on to the next question. How do we, from another anonymous person, how do we make sure that our D&I schemes aren't patronising? Making sure diverse talent feel like they're being themselves is enough, rather than again being a token.
It's about allowing their authentic selves to come to the table and allowing them to give you feedback. So when you as a business have programs, projects, the new brand that you're pushing out, ask everyone for their feedback. And if it's not comfortable for them to do it in a formal setting like if it's not comfortable for them to do that in a formal setting like a meeting or an email, perhaps also use an anonymous box. So at MTV, we used to have a big anonymous note box that people could just slip in a piece of paper, and it's not very digital, but it meant that people who were fearful of speaking out in a meeting or putting something in writing because of, you know, concern about something coming back to them, they were able to still have their voices heard, and genuinely listen to them before you put out a brand or a new campaign. push it around all staff for their feedback. There's nothing worse than one department that's responsible for outside comms and external comms pushing out a brand and then the rest of the staff feeling mortified by it, as is what happened in one of the TV stations that I work at a couple of years ago. You know, something goes out and suddenly everyone is tweeting me or texting me going, what? Why didn't you speak up? Well, we didn't know because it wasn't shared around the whole of staff. So make sure that everyone has a voice at the table and everyone is able to give feedback.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I've just got a question here. I think we'll do last question and then we'll wrap up. So there's a lengthy one, but it says, hi, there's been a lot of discussion relating to entry-level talent. However, what happens to those that have mid-senior level experience that are struggling to maintain at that level, let alone progress?
Does anyone else?
I would say, well, I think that also like another thing that I touched on is really about training those people's managers on how they can measure their performance and their career development, you know, making these things essential, you know, that they have one-to-ones, they have like appraisals, you know, that they can't be missed, and making those their managers accountable, and you know, like making sure that they are able to again use that to go, right, I'm entitled to a promotion now, I've done this and this. So I think, yeah, putting it on the managers definitely for those mid to senior level people.
And also I think it's about looking at other companies that are doing diversity and inclusion well and seeing how their mid-level staff are retaining and going up to C-suite, and ask yourself about whether you do need positive discrimination. Sometimes bring those women or people of colour or whatever minority group they come from, bring them to the top tables, let them have a place on your trustee board or, you know, the senior management team, because until you get a different voice there, you're not going to get anything different. If you do the same as you've always done, you'll get the same as you've always got. It makes no sense. And so one thing that I thought was really normal across most businesses was mentors. And then I go into companies sometimes to talk about D&I and they say, oh no, they've never had mentors. So if you're at mid-level and you're kind of stuck there, you need a mentor who is much higher. It might not be a leader in your own company, it may be, but it might be a leader in a different company. They need to help you navigate and negotiate these different conversations about getting ahead and getting promoted, because not everybody is experienced in the art of pushing themselves forward. At Google a couple of years ago, they were looking for everyone to apply for these new leadership roles, and they found that women at Google had barely applied. And so when they openly told the whole company and staff that they'd had a plethora of men applying who were not all qualified for the job, but the men had gone for it anyway, but the women has obviously looked at the job description and gone, oh, we don't think that we have the skill set for this, they hadn't applied. So when they told all staff that, suddenly a lot more women were applying for it. So it's about being transparent about your diversity to get people to go, you know what, maybe I'll go for that. Mentor each other.
Definitely. Should we do one more question, and then we'll, I don't know, Pip, if you've got any final thoughts that you'd like to contribute before. Mate, you have to press the unmute button again as well.
Sorry, I've been dropping in and out. I'm like, literally, this has been, yeah, Wi-Fi on a houseboat. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry if I missed the question, but something I've seen done really well, particularly in tech, is around what's called sort of happiness surveys. So these are surveys that go out to the entire team. They're completely anonymous. So, for example, we do it at the Dots and we say, you know, my OKR as CEO is 10 out of 10 happiness for my team. And I send out an anonymous survey every quarter and say how happy you come to the Dots each week, and 1 to 10. And then I ask sort of 3 questions, which are very sort of similar, I guess, but how can we improve the office to make you happier? How can we improve the product to make you happier? And what would you do as CEO? And what's amazing about that, and actually it's quite grueling to read it. But what's amazing about that is it helps me identify problems that are happening with the culture and inclusivity, and very much remembering that there's no cookie cutter approach for everyone. So examples, for example, a number of my team are autistic, and they were really struggling with an open co-working space because there were too many distractions. And then I could design spaces that were better for them, that were quieter and not as distracting. And also, I used to have flexible working for mums at the Dots, but I didn't introduce it for dads. And actually, I got called out for that. It was like, well, why do mums have it and dads don't? And like, that was my bias. And of course, dads should have it too. So I think that's been a really good way of, like, you know, our retention at the Dots is amazing. It's a really good way to retain staff, to remember that everyone's individual needs are very, very different. You know, I'm a white female tech dyslexic founder. My experience is very different from a black female founder. And just looking at those differences, I find that survey is so important to design a working environment that works for everyone, not a cookie cutter model. So yeah, that's kind of my point.
Amazing. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for joining today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. And to think, a year ago I was unemployed, and now I'm here presenting some amazing panelists talking about a really, really important subject. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining, and we'll take this opportunity to spread information about all of our panelists and what the Prince's Trust are up to. Thank you so much. Cheers.
For having us.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.